Odd Conduit Media.
What's it gonna be?
You are now listening to the
Hyrule Podcasters! Rumble, rumble.
Hey, all you dreamers. Welcome to another episode of
Hyrule Podcasters!
The podcast of the Windfish.
I'm your co-host, Ben.
And I'm your co-host, Pat.
On this audio-only Let's Play, we venture through each game in Nintendo's Zelda franchise.
Yep, we're pretty practiced gamers, but we're not experts or purists. We're just experiencing each game start to finish.
And this season, we're playing The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX for the Game Boy Color.
Yeah, buddy.
How you feeling about it?
I'm so excited. I'm so amped. You know, I was going to replay this game before we started the season, but
Same.
I didn't. I waited because I'm like excited to I haven't played it this year, let's say.
Okay.
What about you? Did you end up playing it in the interim?
Yeah, so I played about 90 minutes of it just to, re-remember it. Like most things, it was a project that I started and didn't finish. You can see that on our Twitter account that I run. I think in like 2 days, I'm like, oh, I'm at the third dungeon, and then just like, boo.
You know, so it goes. To be fair, we do start and finish a lot of projects. We introduced today's episode the same way that we introduced one of our recent side quest episodes, our Mega Ran interview, because his book is called The Dream Master. We had him on. We talked about his music, got a little I Love Video Games talk in there. And we've been introducing our new podcast the same exact way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that's a coincidence.
It was not a coincidence. It was done purposely. So as we get going today, Patrick, there are 3 versions of this game that are available to play right now.
Mm-hmm.
Which one are we playing and why?
So we're trying to go pretty much in release order. We skipped around so that we could play Ocarina with everybody when it came out on Switch. I feel like jumping ahead and playing the Switch remake of this game, which is delightful, and I recommend everybody play it, would be skipping too far ahead into the future and would disrupt the delicate balance that we have right now of semi-release order. So then it comes back to, okay, there's 2 versions for Game Boy. One for the original Game Boy, one for the Game Boy Color. Which do we do? So we chose DX because it's pretty much the exact same game as the original Link's Awakening, but it's colorful, which is nice to look at. It has an extra dungeon, which is fun to dive into. And it's fun to look at. It's like we're not going to play both Link's Awakening and Link's Awakening DX, so we might as well go for the souped up version that the gameplay is the same. I'm sure there's some glitches in the original that they fixed, but we don't like play with glitches, so that's not going to change anything. And it's still an old game. It's still retro, as the kids call it these days.
Yeah, and I think as always, we are utilizing Zelda Dungeon and Zelda Universe to kind of get most of our information from. And I'm on Zelda Dungeon right now, and there are really very few differences. We don't want to get into any of them. You can look them up on your own. This is a 25-plus-year-old game, so, nothing that you might be spoiled on, but you might be playing it for the first time. So there, like Patrick said, there is an extra dungeon that we will be going over. And then there's also a really cool photographer structure.
Yeah.
That utilizes in-game kind of mouse taking pictures of you at certain moments.
Are we going to do that?
That's really fun. I think we'll do that.
I think we'll do it. I did it last time I played through.
And then there are only 3 additional changes. One is that there are owl statues that have been changed. And then there are 2 places in the game where there is something different. and we will touch on those when we get there. But I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who might be playing this game for the first time with us. I've already had some people on Twitter and Discord say they were just waiting to play this game for when we started, and so we'll touch on those two changes. But other than that, you really just have some the updated color, and you have 5 changes between the two games. And so we're really, like Patrick said, we weren't going to play both, and so why not play the DX version? I think we'll probably play the Switch version by my calculation, we're about 4.5 to 5 years away from that.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah. So by that point, it'll be nice and fresh. Well, Tears of the Kingdom or Tears of the Kingdom will probably take up a big chunk of the back half of 2023.
Exactly.
For Patrick and I. So yeah, our plan right now is to play this up until when that game comes out, and then figure out how to do this podcast once we get to Tears of the Kingdom.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tricky one. We might just have to fly me out and beat the whole game in like 3 weeks.
Or do like a 48-hour live stream marathon.
Yeah, that could be fun. But back to Link's Awakening. Again, Ben said hello, Dreamers, which is what we do on the Sandman Unlocked podcast that we're running for Neil Gaiman's Sandman, the comic book and the Netflix series. And it's also relevant in this game. The title is Link's Awakening, after all. And again, old game. We're going to accidentally hit you with some spoilers, but for now, let's just leave it at this game has something to do with dreams, which were a big part of my life. When I was a kid, my mom would always ask me about my dreams every morning. And I've recently learned that Ben was jealous of my relationship with dreams. Ben, did you have any dreams last night?
None that I could remember, Patrick.
None that you can remember. I did, but at this point, I can't remember much. A lot of it involved being back in high school. This is something we're going to do every episode, by the way, because we're playing Link's Awakening.
Absolutely.
I remember just a couple days ago, I had a dream that I was like, okay, I have a master's degree. Why on earth am I in high school? Like, is everybody messing with me, Mom? And Mom was like, everybody was ignoring me until I put my foot down. I was like, no, tell me why I'm in high school if I have a master's degree. Am I out of my mind? Like, is this all an illusion? And Mom says to me, well, Pat, you have good days and you have bad days. Which is honestly maybe one of the scariest things that I've ever had happen to me in a dream.
Very frightening.
Very frightening.
I had 2 more things before we jump into the meat and potatoes of this episode. So the first, we have a choice we have to make, Patrick.
Oh, okay.
Are we calling this season the Ballad of the Podcast, or are we calling it the Podcast of the Windfish?
I already made the logo, and
choices are being made for us. By historical Patrick.
We made this decision a year ago when we were going to initially launch this season.
By historical Benjamin too, apparently.
And I don't remember because I haven't looked at the logo since you decided that I wasn't allowed to play my favorite Zelda game because the Switch announced Ocarina of Time. So
classic older brother move, for sure.
I don't know. It's on my hard drive. I got to bust it out. Is that a good enough answer? Can we leave all this peek behind the curtain talking?
I love it. No, absolutely.
Cool.
This is what people pay for, I think.
This
right?
is what people. Yeah, this is what they want. Give the people what they want.
I think this is what they want. So,
all right. So, what was the second one?
The second one is, unlike our other podcast, we actually get to update people about our lives because we think you care about them. And if you don't, you can skip ahead a couple minutes and we'll be into the actual episode.
Yeah, hit that 15-second forward a few times.
Yeah, and this doesn't usually take too long. But Patrick, what have you been up to? I think our last episode was about 6 months ago by the time people hear this.
It's been a wild summer. I played a lot of shows all over the eastern United States, which is now what I call anything east of the Mississippi.
I thought you were going to say anything east of the Rockies. You're like, Rockies and east.
I played some really good shows with Basil and the Supernaturals. I played some really good solo shows. I was out east traveling for almost a little over 3 months. It seems like. No, it was probably a little over 2 months. Anyway, and I got a lot of shows in. I put out a record on my record label Whack. We put out an album from Miles Cook. That was really cool. And I prepped to put out my own album in a month or so that I'm sure I'll touch on briefly. A lot of work. We've been doing the Sandman podcast, which has been a lot of fun. I've never read the comic. And so to be able to read along with a theologian and a comic books expert, every issue breaking it down, and you kind of guiding them through it has been delightful and just chilling. And then to top it all off, I went to a wedding.
That's right.
Not
Patrick
too long ago.
Instrumental in the wedding of myself and my now wife, Jenny.
Yeah, that wedding was dope.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. It was, I'm going to say I did 30% of the work and Jenny did about 70% of the work. I think that's about the right breakdown, which we knew going into it.
Sure.
I knew that I didn't have quite as much time available because of some other commitments that I already made. But we wanted to get married in October, and Jenny was able to really spend a whole lot of time doing a lot of the pieces and parts of it. And Patrick was the MC for the wedding, and was instrumental in everybody having a very good time. Once we were at the reception.
Sound guy, MC, DJ, front of house manager.
Pat spent something like 2.5 to 3 hours trying to get a stupid PA system to work, which honestly, I think we thought that was going to be one of the easiest things. That was the line item for that, I think, was about 20 minutes. Set up PA, 20 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's always a lot more complicated than that. I was working with a PA system that I've used before, but it just didn't want to work. Our neighbor Pete was the one that ended up saving the day. I had to connect the iPad to a guitar amp and then run that through the PA to get the sound to come out right. I don't know why. I don't know how. It has something to do with external power. All I cared about was that I got it done in time to give myself 15 minutes to get dressed and ready for the ceremony.
It was amazing. So Jenny and I are freshly back from a really relaxing honeymoon, and
yeah, how was it? I haven't heard about it at all.
It was amazing. It was, I think it was probably the first vacation that I've ever had where the entire point of the 5 days was just to relax. And
yes.
It was great.
Good.
I relaxed for 5 days, and it was amazing.
I can't even imagine you relaxing for 5 days. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
I mean, I think the most I did, one day we went on a 2-hour walking tour of Old San Juan.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice, very easy. And most days it was getting up, having brunch together, walking to the beach, sitting at the beach. I think we both read like 2 or 3 books while we were there. It's just, that's the way you want it to go. Yeah.
That's incredible.
Warm water as well. Like, I'm just not used to warm water.
Yes, the warm water.
Just warm water. Warm ocean water.
In my speech, I mentioned that this relationship is an opportunity for you to relax and reflect. And you're starting off good, man. Relaxing for 5 days straight.
5 days straight. 5 days straight. So
good job.
I think there's only one other change for this season after some feedback, mostly from myself. We are dropping the Zelda Minute as a feature of every single episode. I think if there is exciting news about Tears/Tears of the Kingdom, we will definitely be sure to touch on that. But we're doing some really great work with the folks over at Zelda Universe, and they just cover it so much better. We're not trying to be that kind of podcast. So it'll probably be us just parroting Zelda Universe and the cool stuff they're doing over there. So Again, shout out to the folks over there. Shout out especially to Joshua, who we did a interview with over the summer as one of the side quest episodes as we were on a break. And yeah, we're really excited to see all of the great content and to what is Nintendo going to show us next over the 7 months, I think, that we have.
What
7
will
or 8
they
months that we
come
have.
up with next? You know, Ben is extremely ambitious and comes to me with this idea. Not only are we going to do another season right now and switch gears entirely and completely change our setup, but also I'm going to do a Zelda Minute every episode, and I'm going to video it, and then I'm going to edit the video, and then I'm going to put the video on YouTube, and then we're going to try to grow our YouTube subscribers. And I'm just over here like, can we just try to get the audio to work first? Can that be the first thing we do? And, you know, we did the Zelda Minute every episode. We didn't end up making a video element, but it was cool. I liked making the theme song for that. That
was fun. We'll find uses for that theme song for sure.
Yeah, we could do a Zelda Minute every now and then, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
But, you know, we're trying to keep this low committal. We're doing every other week on this season. We run a podcast company, and we have another podcast. And so we're just going to kind of go back and forth every other week. It gives everybody at home a little more relaxed schedule that wants to play along with us. And it ensures that our content will be tip-top.
That's what we're going for. Tip-top content.
Tippity-top content.
So without... What? Is that Chloe behind you?
Chloe?
Oh, it's Beetle!
Beetle, what are you doing back there?
What's he doing?
Wow.
He's still here.
Who'd have thunk after all this time? What do you got for us, Beetle?
All right, so some quick facts as we get things going here. So as Patrick said, we're going to be playing The Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DX. This game came out in 1998 globally, and it is just a colorization, for the most part, of the 1993 Game Boy game Link's Awakening. And it is set on a mysterious island called Koholint. And it will be Link's adventure on this island as he explores it and tries to understand what's happening.
What's happening?
What's happening?
What's going on?
What's going on? The one thing I wanted to point out before we dive into the manual here is that this is the Link from A Link to the Past. So he has defeated Ganon in A Link to the Past, and then it's being pushed forward, and this is a direct sequel to that game.
So he gets on a boat after fixing all the stuff in A Link to the Past. Does he fix all the stuff? Is this the timeline where everything's groovy?
No. So this is the timeline that has Oracle of Seasons, Oracle of Ages during the era of Light and Dark. And then This is when Ganondorf defeated Link.
Dark timeline. Link crash lands on an island. There's no Zelda. There's no Ganon. It is one of the only games that doesn't take place in Hyrule. It's really fun. I like it. It's a breath of fresh air, in my opinion.
It's a breath of fresh air. And speaking of that, why don't we take a look at the prologue from the manual? Though you fulfilled the Hyrulean prophecy of the legendary hero and destroyed the evil tyrant Ganon, the land of Hyrule enjoyed only a precarious peace. Who knows what threats may arise from Ganon's ashes? The restless people murmured as they knitted their brows and shook their heads. Ever vigilant, you decided to journey away from Hyrule on a quest for enlightenment, in search of wisdom that would make you better able to withstand the next threat to your homelands. Months of difficult travel passed. After a long and fruitful voyage, you breathed deeply the sea spray from the deck of the ship that carried you home to Hyrule. But your homecoming was not to be. Suddenly, a squall struck your ship, and though you valiantly fought the waves, a lightning bolt reduced your ship to splinters. Your world faded to black as you sank into the darkness of the storm-tossed sea with the remains of your craft. But in the cold darkness of the deep, you heard a comforting voice that reminded you of home. It was the voice of Princess Zelda. You're going to be all right, the voice said. What a relief.
You opened your eyes to find Princess Zelda standing over you. Or was it? Actually, it turned out to be a woman named Marin. She explained that you had drifted with the wreckage of your ship to the shores of Koholint Island. This mysterious island was unique for the gigantic egg which crowned its central mountain. It was said that a mythical creature, the Windfish, lay asleep inside the egg. You set out in search of your sword and other gear that might have washed up on the beach with you. As you stood in the surf with your recovered sword, a strange owl appeared and hooted this riddle.
Awaken the Windfish, and all will be answered.
Wait, hold on.
No.
You're not going to do
No.
the owl voice
It's a different
from
owl.
Ocarina?
It's a different owl. It's a different owl.
It's a different owl. Give us a little bit. Give us a little owl, though. Don't just give us a smooth voice. Come on, you got something in there.
Woohoo! Awaken the Windfish, and all will be answered.
You have to do that the whole season.
Damn it. No.
What is the Windfish, you wonder? And what did its awakening portend? Your most mysterious adventure yet, following the riddle of the Windfish through the uncharted island of Koholint, is about to unfold.
All right, so obviously what is different about this game is that you're going from the SNES, which had 4 face buttons and 2 shoulder buttons, down to the Game Boy, which only has the D-pad and the A and B button, which is very similar to the NES setup. And the one change they make, so if you've ever played the original, The Legend of Zelda for the NES, you're able to adjust what is in your B button slots. So A is always going to be your sword, but your B button slot is adjustable. Well, in this game, you're actually able to adjust both your A and B buttons. So there can be times when you don't have your shield or your sword equipped. You could have the shovel, and the magic powder equipped, for example. So one of the things in this game is you do end up doing a lot of menuing as you are selecting which items you need at any given time. For instance, in the second dungeon, you're going to get the power bracelet, which we're going to read about here momentarily. Every time you want to use the power bracelet to pick something up, you have to equip it. So there is quite a bit of menuing, and that is what this next page talks to you about.
And I've found that when I introduce this game to people, I let them know there's going to be menuing because it can be irritating if you don't anticipate it.
I think that's
But
smart.
just accept that it's going to be a part of your gameplay. I considered speed running this game at one point because I've played it so many times. It seemed like a game that I could speed run. I could probably do some Mega Man games, but they're so hard. And sometimes I just can't land that jump onto that moving platform. And it seems very nerve-wracking. But this game seemed like one that I could do until I watched a speed run of this game. And it's like half the thing is just like rapid fire menuing, which is a little too much for me. I take my time with my menu.
Yeah, you got to know the things that you're going to enjoy when it comes to something that you want to speedrun, because it's something like the menuing in it, as I have also watched someone speedrun it, and it's so much menuing. And what makes the menuing even a bit more confusing is the items replace the current item in its location in the submenu.
Right.
So the sword isn't always, for instance, the top left item in the shield is the top right item in the submenu. It's wherever you swap it out for. And so that can make it even more challenging. And in the speedruns, you'll see people, if they miss menu, that can cause them a lot of problems later on, because then things aren't lined up how they're supposed to be, and they actually have to look down at the screen more carefully to do their menuing.
Yeah, it complicates things, but I assume that none of you are trying to speed run through this while we take our time through the game. Although I do anticipate this is going to go a little bit faster just because I'm more familiar with this than either of us are with Ocarina.
Absolutely.
So page 6 and 7 introduce the menu here and tell you about selecting items and viewing the subscreen. We have some cool little pictures of Link. One is him slashing and the other is him swimming. So we get, the information that Link will be swimming in this game, which is cool.
Very cool. Very cool.
On page 8, it says, beginning your journey. Correctly insert the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening DS game pack into your Game Boy system and move the power switch to the on position, which is great that it's telling you how to put the game into
It's
the
just making it
system.
really clear. It's just making it really clear.
Yep, it's just laying it right out. Give your hero a name. They don't tell you to use a wacky name or which name to use, but they tell you how to give your hero
Oh, but
a
look,
name.
if you look in the third screen grab,
Yeah.
Klopka is right there. They named him Klopka.
Whoa! And he looks like he has full hearts. Looks like he already beat the game. That's wild.
So then it talks about how to delete save files and how to copy save files. But now we get into the good stuff. We get into the screen display features.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those things where it's, we read the manual because they give you a manual. So we read it because we think it's important, especially for these older games. You got to read the manual. Like, that's just the thing you have to do.
Yeah.
But someone put in a lot of thought, into, what to include here and what to point out. And so they want to make sure where your heart container is and what it does for you, what your selected items are, what rupees are, who you are on the screen. These are all things that my guess is most people listening to this podcast know all these things because video games are a part of who they are, but
Right.
when this originally came out in 1993, that was just a few years after the Game Boy had even come out. You still have to give people a lot of guidance when they're jumping into a game here.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't know about all y'all, but I have picked up so many old games, specifically at this point through the Switch, and tried to play them, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. It'd be really nice if the Switch included manuals in their online pack. What my family plan renewed today, by the way. And they don't, and it's kind of a bummer because I don't know what's going on in half these games I play. And it might over-explain a little bit at times, but you can just skip past the stuff that you don't know. So again, highly recommend opening up a digital version of a manual if you're playing an older game.
So then we get our first glimpse here of the map screen, and quite a bit of it is actually kind of filled in here. I mean, if you drill down into this, the whole thing's there. So you can actually see the entirety of the map. So we have a 16 by 16, so that's 256 tiles that I'm pretty sure all of them are accessible. That makes it a little bit bigger than the original Legend of Zelda. There are some people who have done some comparisons there. And on the map screen, we get 4 different icons that they want to draw us towards. So we learn that there are dungeons, and that's where the Siren's musical instruments are hidden, and there are 8 of them.
Nice.
We see, do you know what that symbol is called? The exclamation point followed directly by a question mark?
I don't.
It's called an interbang.
An interbang.
An interbang.
Cool. I didn't know that.
These mysterious marks show important locations that you need to visit to proceed through the game. You will have to visit these places to find out what they actually are.
I have a question. When you ask a question in writing and you also want to make it an exclamation, do you put the exclamation point before or after the question mark?
I think I would do Shift-1 for the exclamation point first, and then Shift / for the question.
I think that I do the question mark second as well, but I've been told by people that they do the question mark first. Maybe the reason that both of us do the exclamation point first is because we saw this interbang in Zelda.
I like it.
Maybe
I like
that's
it.
the reason.
So we have our map here, and if you'll notice, kind of in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, there's Beetle. He's on the map.
Beetle's on the map.
He's everywhere.
He's everywhere you want to be. What's up, Beetle? So I looked it up, and apparently you're not allowed to use both an exclamation point and a question mark in snooty, formal written English. And apparently people use both combinations throughout the ages.
But what about the Iterabang?
Well, that is something that I didn't dive too deep into, but you can use that for other stuff.
Unconventional punctuation mark used in various written languages and intended to combine the functions of the question mark and the exclamation mark.
And sometimes it's just one symbol. In this case, it's the double.
Yeah, I like when it's the one symbol. What I really like is
Yeah,
when
it
it's
looks cool.
the one symbol where it's one dot, but then it has a question mark kind of coming off to the left and an exclamation point coming off to the right.
Yeah, I dig it. So underneath the mysterious marks that show important locations, there are shops. And there aren't that many shops.
Chaps.
And then there's a little owl symbol that is a message. Now, I notice on the map that we have like the woods off in the west, the water off in the east. We have an ocean shore down south, and we have mountains up north. And then centrally, I see like a castle of sorts and a big tree. And this is kind of reminiscent of A Link to the Past.
Absolutely. It
really reminds me of that map. Up next on page 16, it tells you how to move your character. The basic moves are walking, talking and reading, opening treasure chests, pushing, and, drumroll, leaping. So you'll be hopping off of some ledges. It shows you here, and that just happens automatically.
Absolutely.
Which is cool to be hopping around. They show you a little bit of screenshots of the game. You're in a dungeon. You're talking to a little boy. Hey, dude. Blah, 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 blah. So that's exciting. Again, the pushing mechanic that's really important in Zelda. We're going to be solving some puzzles by pushing some stuff around.
So next, they talk about using items. And so this is kind of our first entree into the subscreen where we're able, again, you can put items in either A or B. And so they let us know that we have our normal sword blows and our whirling blade technique, right? These are both things that we saw in the previous game, A Link to the Past. We also see that we're going to be able to jump in this game using something called Rock's Feather.
Yeah.
We also get the Pegasus boots again, which allow us to jump much further than normal if we use them.
Yeah, and the illustrations here are just so great. It's Link, and it's not like it's full-grown Link. You know, you're an adult here, and I highly recommend checking these out. They look just like the Super Nintendo Link illustrations.
One thing I like that they do here is we have defend, and it says, note, you must press the button to bring your shield up into a ready position. So this will be different than the previous 3 games that have come out. So in the other ones, the shield was just passive in front of you. As long as you weren't attacking at that moment, the shield would reflect whatever was coming at it, assuming, of course, that shield had the power, let's say, to reflect that particular projectile coming at it. But here you actually have to press the button.
And then the next 2 pages make use of some items, which I don't want to give away all of it, but you can run, ram objects, lift and throw, pull, swim, and some other moves. And if you read through the whole thing, you basically figure out exactly what you're going to get in this entire game, which brings us to heroic equipment, which actually lays out every item that you'll be receiving, including what looks like all of the items to start the trade game, which is kind of surprising that they put, for example, the doll in here, right?
Yeah, the doll. That's kind of the start of the trading game. Yeah, it really is. Yeah, it really is. And so, as Patrick said, you can read the manual. We're reading the manual, let's say lightly, because we do know that there are some people here that haven't played the game before, and you might just want to be surprised by everything. You don't need to read the heroic equipment to be able to play the game. You will be able to figure out what all these things do. They are all classic items that you will certainly be familiar with, and we would certainly encourage you that if you're trying to play this spoiler-free, we're not going to ruin it by talking about each of the items, but they're here if you did want to come and take a look.
I will take a moment to comment on the secret shells that are scattered throughout the island. If you find enough of them, something good is sure to happen. Yeah. And that's something that will pop up on the screen over and over again as we find these secret shells.
So we know that there are 8 dungeons, and here we can see that on the next page, we are told about at least 5 keys that we need. We have a tail key, a slime key, an angler key, a bird key, and a face key.
I love that face.
So that's all things that keys that we're going to have to find somewhere in the world to be able to get into some of these dungeons that have the sirens' instruments in them.
We also have dungeon items, the map and the compass. The compass will indicate the location of the dungeon's nightmare and the position of treasure chests that you have not opened, which is good. It shows you where the treasure chests are. We got some stone slabs and fragments that are going to come in handy. The nightmare key looks like a luchador mask. It's really cool.
It really does.
Right? That's really cool. And it kind of shows you how the map, once you're inside the dungeon, lights up and what the indicators tell you about navigating around those dungeons. And I'm kind of looking to see if there's anything I don't know in here, and it's pretty all straightforward. You know, this is the first time I've ever read this manual, to be completely honest.
There you go. We always love honesty here on the Hyrule Podcasters.
We do love honesty.
So we know that we're going to have to solve the riddle of the Windfish with the sirens' musical instruments. And so those are listed out here, and we have 8 really cool items that they spend some time with. So we have the thunder drum, the full moon cello, the conch horn, the sea lily bell, the surf harp, the wind marimba, the coral triangle, and the organ of evening calm. So that is what we are collecting.
If we succeed, that is.
That is true.
You never know. And then they give you a couple of hints about fragile walls that you can bomb, which is very kind of them to tell you. I mean, you all probably know about this because you've probably played a Zelda game before. Some pitfalls, don't fall down the hole. And we have fairies in this game, large and tiny fairies.
Large and tiny fairies, absolutely.
We also have heart containers and heart pieces. So we'll be collecting heart fragments to build larger heart pieces while we walk around the world. It tells you how to save and continue, which, honestly, if you didn't read the manual, how are you supposed to know how to quit the game? You press start, select A and B at the same time.
Yep.
To be able to select save and quit. Like, how are you supposed to know that? Now, luckily, it auto saves every time that you like enter and exit a dungeon and some shops and stuff like that. But how are you supposed to know?
I don't think that's true on the Game Boy version.
It is, yeah.
Okay.
It auto saves on that one too.
All right. Then they tell us a few things we should know about Koholint Islands. So it's full of mysteries and riddles, but they let us know about a few things we might want to check out. There's a fishing pond, a trendy game, a tool shop, and a telephone booth. All things that we'll get to explore.
I might remind my brother here that when we started this podcast, Ben says, and we'll get into some stuff later, like trading games and fishing, which I always like in Zelda games. And then pretty quickly you were like, wait, I don't like fishing in Zelda games. It just like totally made that up off the jump. But the fishing in this game is pretty fun. It's a self-contained event. We get a cast of characters coming up next. Marin and Terran and the owl.
The mysterious owl.
Is
mysterious
he a friend
owl or foe?
You don't know. He's hiding his face with his wing. Link's taking a break next to a tree underneath the owl. And then you get Grandpa Ulrira, Mr. Wright, and Crazy Tracy. Those are the 3 that they choose to focus on here. I'm interested why they chose those. I mean, clearly the grandpa's helpful, as for reasons we'll find out soon. But Mr. Right and Crazy Tracy, it's interesting that they chose those two because there's so many characters. And that's what makes this game stand out to me from the other games is that, so there were a lot of characters in Link's Awakening, but the characters in this game are wacky and odd and just unlike anything that we've seen in Zelda so far. I'd say even wackier and odder than the characters in Ocarina.
Absolutely. And the very last page here talks about the new features. So we touched on these briefly during the introduction, but we have a brand new color dungeon. You have to have a Game Boy Color in order for this to work. And we have a camera store and photographer that is somewhere on the islands. So those are the two additions that they let you know about as a part of this remake, colorization, let's say. I don't think remake's quite the right word. Colorization of the classic game.
And you can print out the pictures that you take in this game, like like 8 standard pictures that you encounter. Yep. If you have a Game Boy printer sold separately, we don't have a Game Boy printer, which is kind of ridiculous that I don't own a Game Boy printer. I feel like I have 18 Game Boys. I should have a printer. I'm gonna put that on my wish list.
I like it. And lastly, important warning: copying of any Nintendo game is illegal and is strictly prohibited by domestic and international copyright laws.
Ben's gonna read the whole warning.
Archival copies are not authorized and are not necessary to perfect your software. Violators will be prosecuted
and never allowed to enter the shop again. That's a foreshadowing joke. So the final 2 pages are for notes. And just notes. I am very curious if we wrote notes in our original manual or not.
Well, we were definitely people who took lots of notes and used the manual when we were growing up, I feel like. You said you didn't read it, but maybe you never read it in a way that you can state, emphatically that, like, yes, I remember sitting there. But I guarantee you, every game that we bought at Chapel Hill Mall on the ride home, we were flipping through that manual before we got home in the back of the car.
Because we weren't allowed to play the game, even though it was a handheld system. We weren't allowed to play the game until we got home.
Right.
So we could only read the manual in the car, which was very, very exciting. And I'm sure our mother was just like, oh, don't tear the packaging open, as we destroyed the beautiful packaging in order to get to the meat and bones of what we were excited to experience. Pretty good manual.
And we're excited to experience season 4 with all of you.
Very excited. We're going to start in a couple weeks. We'll pop into your little feed there on however you're listening, and you can play along with us. Ben, we finally made it to The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening.
You gotta love when you cover the thing that is your favorites. It will just bring you so much more joy as you're sitting there editing 2 podcasts now. Just remember that. This was a choice.
And we got that other one we're working on,
I know. So,
cool.
Well, hey, that wraps it up for today. We did want to say a huge thank you to all of our patrons who, over the last 6 months, have continued to support us. We made sure that we got out usually an interview or something interesting every month. We know that it is a financial burden to support help, that are doing things you're excited about and you're passionate about. But we really appreciate, all the help that we get from all of you. And with that, if you want to support us on Patreon, head on over. We also just have an awesome Discord. So if you just want to come chill out with us, you can find it there. Links are in the show notes. And with that, we cannot wait to see you for the kickoff of season 4 of the
Hyrule Podcasters.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
See you next time. Peace, peace, peace. We're back. Thanks for listening to this episode of
Hyrule Podcast. Podcasters,
Podcast of the Windfish.
an Odd Conduit Media production.
If you like what you're hearing and want to support us directly, you can head over to our Patreon page. We'd also love to see you in our Discord. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at Hyrule Podcasters and on Twitter at Hyrule Podcaster.
As always, this episode was produced by Patrick, and we'd like to thank LT Headtrip for composing original music for the podcast, including our theme song.
If you want to play along, you can find Link's Awakening DX on Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or the 3DS via their virtual console. The Nintendo Switch High Definition Remake is also a great option to play along.
And be sure to rate and review us in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you happen to listen.
And action!
I gotta say, the Beetle ad breaks are easier than the other ad breaks. Those ones are
Well,
kind of
you
hard to
made
come up with things on the
yourself
fly.
come up with a brand new thing every time. I gotta say, oh look, and Crystal's coming in at the ad break. This is
Wow.
perfect timing.
During the ad break.
Hi,
That was
Crystal.
pretty perfect timing.
We're back for a new season
What
of
up, Crystal?
Hyrule Podcasters.
I believe it's Hyrule Podcasters.
You got it. And I think that you just gave us our blooper reel, too. All right, you ready to come back in, Ben?
I am. 3, 2, 1.
Odd Conduit Media.